The sound of the school bell echoed through the hallways, signaling the end of another long day. For Marcus, a 16-year-old high school student, it was just another day in a life that felt like it had been cursed from the very beginning. Every day, he faced the same cruel, unforgiving routine. The laughter, the taunts, the whispers, they followed him like a shadow that refused to leave.
He was used to it by now, though.
Being the target of constant bullying, he had learned to keep his head down, avoid eye contact, and just survive until the final bell rang. But what happened on this particular day would change everything, shaking the very foundation of how he viewed not just his school, but people in general. Marcus was the kind of person who tried to stay out of trouble. He didn't ask for attention. All he wanted was peace. Peace from the endless insults and the cruel jokes about his appearance, his family, and his background. Being a young black man in a predominantly white school made him stand out in a way he never asked for. But being different, in the eyes of some, was something to be ridiculed. Some days it felt like the whole school was against him. The whispers in the hallway grew louder, and the stares from his classmates more piercing. But Marcus had learned to deal with it. He buried the hurt deep down, hiding his pain behind a mask of indifference. He became a ghost in the school, unnoticed, invisible, and numb to the world around him. It wasn't that Marcus didn't have a heart. Quite the opposite. He had dreams of a future that felt so distant, so unreachable. He wanted to make something of himself, to rise above the hate and prejudice. But each day felt like a battle he wasn't sure he could win. And it wasn't just the kids at school. His teachers, too, had their moments, their subtle ways of showing they didn't quite expect him to succeed. It was hard, being one of the few black students in a school where the majority just didn't understand him, didn't want to understand him. But that day was different. As Marcus boarded the bus, trying to keep his distance from the usual crowd of students, he noticed her immediately. She was standing by the door, looking around, and there was something about her that caught his attention. A pregnant woman, her belly large and round, her face tired but calm. She looked around for a seat, but the bus was crowded. No one seemed to notice her, or if they did, no one seemed willing to give up their seat. Marcus felt a strange pull in his chest. Something about her situation tugged at him. Without even thinking, he stood up and offered her his seat. The other passengers on the bus seemed oblivious to the silent gesture, but to Marcus, it felt right. The kind of right he hadn't felt in a long time. The woman looked at him, surprise flickering across her face. It was as if she hadn't expected anyone to be kind enough to offer her a seat. She smiled softly and sat down, her eyes filled with a mix of gratitude and something else, something Marcus couldn't quite place. It was a moment that seemed so simple, but in that small act, Marcus felt something shift inside him. Maybe kindness, real kindness, could still exist in this world that had so often been so cruel to him. But the woman wasn't just any pregnant stranger on a bus. No, she was someone who would play a role in changing Marcus's life forever. As the bus made its way through the city streets, the woman took out a piece of paper from her bag and scribbled something on it. She folded the note carefully and then handed it to Marcus as she stood up to leave. "Here," she said, her voice warm but steady. "You deserve to read this." Marcus stared at the note for a moment, unsure of what to make of it. He hadn't expected anything in return for his small act of kindness, certainly not a note from a stranger. As the woman exited the bus, he unfolded the paper, his heart beating a little faster as he read the words written in neat, careful handwriting. But before he could even process what the note said, the bus came to a stop. Marcus looked up, but the woman was gone, lost among the crowd on the street. His hands shook slightly as he held the note, its contents still a mystery. What could it be? What could this stranger possibly want to say to him? And why had she chosen him, of all people? Marcus sat there for a moment, the noise of the bus fading into the background.
He had a choice now.
He could ignore the note, throw it away, and forget about it. Or he could open it and find out what it had to offer. The note had a weight to it, a promise of something more, something different. But what? His curiosity burned inside him, but with it came a deep sense of uncertainty. What if this was just another false hope? What if it was some cruel joke that he would later regret believing in? After all, life had taught him to be cautious, to protect his heart from the lies that people told him every day. But then again, Marcus had always believed that one small act of kindness could spark something greater. Could this be the moment that would change everything? The weight of the note in his hands seemed to carry the weight of his entire future. Marcus knew that whatever it said, it would alter the course of his life forever. He took a deep breath and unfolded the paper, preparing himself for whatever was about to come next. But what happened next? Well, that's a story for another time. Marcus's fingers trembled as he unfolded the note, the crinkling of the paper loud in the otherwise quiet bus. His heart beat a little faster, the anticipation almost unbearable. What could a stranger, a pregnant woman he'd never met before, want to tell him? His mind raced with questions, each one louder than the last. He glanced around, his eyes scanning the faces of the other passengers, but no one seemed to notice what was happening. They were all lost in their own worlds, absorbed in their phones, chatting among themselves or staring blankly out of the windows. Marcus took a deep breath, steadying himself as he looked down at the note. The handwriting was neat, elegant, almost too perfect. It read, "Dear young man, I don't know you, but I feel like I do. I can tell from the way you carry yourself that life has not been kind to you. That's why I wanted to write this. Not because I think I have the answers, but because I want you to know that the world doesn't define you. You define it. I've been through my own struggles. Things no one would ever guess by looking at me. But I've learned that in moments like these, when everything feels impossible, we have a choice. You have a choice. It's easy to let the weight of the world crush you. It's easy to give in to the cruelty and the hurt, to let it take over. But I promise you, there's another way. And I see something in you that others don't. You have a strength in you that will carry you through, no matter what comes next. Please, don't let them break you. You are stronger than they'll ever know. With all my heart, a friend." Marcus blinked, reading the note over and over again, each word sinking in deeper than the last. It wasn't the kind of message he'd expected, not at all. He had prepared himself for something trivial, something that would make him laugh at how absurd it was. But this felt real. Too real. The words struck a chord inside him, stirring something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. But Marcus quickly pushed that feeling down. Hope had always led to disappointment, hadn't it? Every time he'd believed someone, every time he'd let his guard down, life had knocked him back down. His mother had always told him to keep his chin up, that there was light at the end of the tunnel. But after years of struggling with the constant bullying, the stares, and the whispers, Marcus had learned that the tunnel never really ended. The light always seemed so far away. So why now? Why this woman? Why had she chosen to share something so personal, so deeply moving with him? She didn't even know him. He could have been anyone, some random teenager on a bus. But she had singled him out. There was something more here. He could feel it in his bones. The bus pulled to a stop, and Marcus's thoughts were interrupted as more passengers boarded. He stuffed the note into his pocket, feeling the weight of it there, like it was a secret he wasn't ready to share. He couldn't help but glance out the window, his mind still racing, trying to make sense of what had just happened. The woman's words played over and over in his mind, echoing in his ears. You define the world. You are stronger than they'll ever know. What did that mean? How could he, a 16-year-old high school student struggling just to make it through each day, be stronger than the people who tore him down every chance they got? How could he be someone worth believing in when he didn't even know if he believed in himself anymore? The bus ride felt like an eternity. Marcus tried to focus on anything else, the passing buildings, the trees, the faces of the people around him, but all he could think about was the note. He had never felt so conflicted before. Part of him wanted to ignore it, to shove it away like every other kind of hope that had only led to disappointment. But another part of him, the part that had been buried so deep for so long, the part that had forgotten how to dream, wanted to believe it. Wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe, there was a chance for something better. By the time Marcus stepped off the bus, his head was spinning. His mind was a whirlwind of thoughts and feelings that he didn't know how to process. He walked home in a daze, the note still weighing heavily in his pocket, like a reminder that something had shifted. But what? What had changed? As he walked through the front door of his house, his mother was sitting at the kitchen table, going through some paperwork. She looked up when he entered, her face softening with a mixture of concern and warmth. "Hey, Marcus. How was school?" she asked, her voice gentle. Marcus paused, unsure of how to answer. How could he explain what had happened? The bullying? The note? He wasn't even sure how to process it himself. So, instead of responding, he just shrugged, forcing a small smile. "Same as always," he muttered, trying to sound indifferent.
His mother didn't buy it.
She set her papers aside and looked at him with a knowing gaze. "Marcus, I can tell when something's bothering you. You know you can talk to me, right?" she said softly, her eyes filled with concern. Marcus didn't say anything at first. He wanted to, but the words were stuck in his throat, tangled up with all the confusion he was feeling. He sat down at the table, his fingers tapping nervously against the edge of the wood.
I
don't know," he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's just everything, you know? The same old stuff. The bullying. The feeling like nothing will ever change. It's just exhausting." His mother nodded, her expression understanding but pained. "I know, baby. But you're stronger than you think. You just have to remember that. You're going to get through this, okay?" Marcus didn't respond, but he appreciated the words. Even if they didn't seem to change much, they gave him something to hold on to. A small thread of hope. As he left the kitchen and retreated to his room, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that something big was coming, something that would change everything. He didn't know what it was, and he didn't know how to prepare for it, but he could feel it deep inside. That night, as he lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the note from the woman kept replaying in his mind. "You define the world," she had written. Was it true? Could he really make a difference? Could he really change the way things were going? He didn't know the answers. But one thing was certain. The next chapter of his life was about to begin, and he had no idea what it would bring. The next day at school, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that everything was different. It was as if the air itself was charged with a kind of static energy, the kind that always precedes a storm. The note was still in his pocket, though he had barely slept the night before, his mind replaying the words over and over again. "You define the world." He couldn't understand what it meant, but there was something in his chest that made him think the woman was right. Maybe he did have a choice. Maybe he didn't have to let the bullies win. But that thought, as hopeful as it seemed, felt fragile. Every day, Marcus walked through the halls like a target, trying to blend in, hoping not to catch anyone's eye. And today felt like any other day in that sense. The same whispers, the same taunts. "Hey, look at the guy who thinks he's special." "What? You think you're going to make something of yourself? Who are you kidding?" The words stung, but Marcus had heard them all before. He had become so accustomed to the insults that they barely registered anymore, like background noise in his life. Still, there was something in the back of his mind, a nagging thought that refused to go away. What if today could be different? What if he could actually stand up for himself this time, confront the people who tormented him, and make them see him for who he truly was? The idea was terrifying, though, and the truth was, he wasn't sure if he was ready to take that step. In his first class of the day, English, Marcus found himself sitting near the back of the room, trying to stay unnoticed. But as usual, he couldn't escape the whispers. It was almost as if they followed him wherever he went. The group of boys at the front of the room, led by Trent, were whispering loudly enough for everyone to hear. "I bet Marcus thinks he's all that just because he got a seat for some pregnant woman. What a joke." They snickered, their laughter sharp and cruel, like nails on a chalkboard. Trent was the worst of them all, always finding a way to make Marcus feel small, insignificant. Marcus wanted to sink into his chair, to disappear. But then, the words from the note echoed in his mind again. "You are stronger than they'll ever know." The thought was both comforting and terrifying. He was still unsure of how to respond to this new feeling inside him. Should he let their words hurt him, or should he fight back? He wasn't sure if he was brave enough, but the more he thought about it, the more he realized that maybe he had to be. Maybe this was the moment he had been waiting for, even if he didn't know it yet. As the bell rang for the next class, Marcus stood up and started to make his way out of the room. But before he could reach the door, Trent called out to him, loud enough for everyone to hear. Hey, Marcus. You think you're some kind of hero now, huh? Giving your seat to a pregnant lady? What's next? You gonna save a kitten from a tree? The laughter that followed was a familiar sound, but today, it felt different. It felt like something broke inside Marcus, a wall he had spent years building to protect himself from the cruelty of others. His heart pounded in his chest, but instead of turning away, he stood still, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. Trent's words were meant to crush him, to remind him of his place. But today, they didn't work. Today, Marcus felt something rise inside him, a feeling he couldn't ignore anymore. For the first time in his life, he found his voice. I didn't do it for you, Trent, Marcus said, his voice steady, though his stomach churned. I did it because it was the right thing to do. The words felt foreign on his tongue, like he wasn't quite sure who was saying them. But they came out anyway, as if they had been waiting to be spoken for years. You should try it sometime. Do something good for once in your life. The room fell silent, the usual chatter disappearing as the words hung in the air. Marcus couldn't believe what he had just said. His breath caught in his throat as he waited for Trent to strike back, to tear him down the way he always did. But for some reason, today felt different. Trent's face twisted into a sneer, but instead of launching into another cruel jab, he just shrugged. Whatever, man. Keep pretending you're better than us. It won't change anything. With that, he turned away, dismissing Marcus as if he were nothing more than a nuisance. Marcus stood there, unsure of what to feel. It hadn't been the big confrontation he had imagined. It hadn't been the dramatic moment where everyone saw him as a hero. But something had changed. For the first time, he hadn't let the bullying control him. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Marcus couldn't stop thinking about what had just happened. He had spoken up, and though it hadn't changed Trent's behavior, it had changed something inside him. He felt different, like he had taken the first step toward reclaiming his power. But there was still so much left to face. What would happen the next time Trent, or anyone else, decided to pick on him? Would he be able to stand up for himself again? That night, Marcus sat in his room, staring at the note again. The words "you are stronger than they'll ever know" were etched in his mind. But there was a part of him that wasn't so sure. How could he be strong when everything around him seemed designed to break him? The bullies at school, the people who didn't believe in him, they were constant reminders that the world was a tough place, one that didn't care about his dreams. His phone buzzed on his desk, breaking his thoughts. He picked it up and saw a message from his best friend, Malik. Yo, you good? I saw what happened with Trent in English. You alright? Marcus hesitated for a moment before replying. I don't know. I think I did something, but I'm not sure what it means yet. Malik's reply came almost instantly.
You did the right thing, man. Don't let them get to you.
You're better than that. Just wait. Something's coming, I can feel it. Marcus stared at the message, his heart pounding again. Something was coming. What if it was the chance he had been waiting for? What if it was the breakthrough he needed to finally change everything? But in the back of his mind, doubt lingered. What if nothing ever changed? What if this was just another empty hope, a cruel joke played on him by life? He didn't know the answers, but one thing was clear. He was standing on the edge of something. He didn't know what it was yet, but he couldn't turn back now. The tension was building, and Marcus could feel it. The next few days would be crucial. The next chapter of his life was unfolding, and there was no going back. The days that followed were a blur of uncertainty for Marcus. Each morning, he woke up with the feeling that something was about to change, that something big was on the horizon. But he never quite knew what to expect. The bullying didn't stop, of course. Trent and his friends were relentless, always finding new ways to push his buttons. The taunts were louder, the jokes more vicious. Yet, each time they threw an insult his way, Marcus felt something shift inside him. Instead of shrinking back like he usually did, he stood taller. His resolve was hardening, even if he couldn't fully understand why. The note, The woman's words had lit a spark in him that he couldn't ignore. But as much as he tried to hold on to that newfound strength, the weight of the world felt heavier with every passing day. It was like a ticking clock, each second moving closer to something he couldn't quite see but could feel deep in his bones. The tension was building, and Marcus didn't know whether it was leading him to freedom or to a breaking point. It was a Friday afternoon when everything came to a head. Marcus was walking down the hall, trying to get to his next class when he felt a sudden shove from behind. He stumbled but caught himself before hitting the floor. He turned around quickly, his heart already racing, to see Trent and two of his friends laughing, clearly delighted at having knocked him off balance. "Watch where you're going, loser," Trent sneered, his voice dripping with mockery. Marcus could feel the anger rising inside him, but he swallowed it down. He had come this far. He couldn't let them break him now. But Trent wasn't done. "What? You still think you're some kind of good guy now? Still trying to save the world, huh? I saw you after school yesterday. You really think you're different from the rest of us? You really think you can change anything?" Marcus didn't know what came over him, but this time, he didn't hold back. His fists clenched, and he stepped closer to Trent, his voice cold but steady. "I'm not like you. I'm not going to be like you." There was a long, tense silence as the two of them locked eyes. Marcus could feel the weight of his own words hanging in the air, as if the whole school was watching, waiting for something to happen. Trent's smile faltered for just a second, but then he straightened up, his eyes narrowing. "You want to play the hero, huh?" Trent spat, his face twisting with anger. "Let's see how far that gets you." Before Marcus could react, Trent shoved him again, harder this time. The impact knocked him back against the lockers, and for a moment, everything seemed to slow down. His heart pounded in his chest, his mind racing. He could feel the anger building in him, a fire that he had kept buried for so long. But as he stood there, staring at Trent, something inside him told him this wasn't the way. This wasn't how he was going to get his power back. He couldn't let them win.
Not now.
Not after everything he had been through. "Enough," Marcus said, his voice cutting through the tension. Trent raised an eyebrow, clearly taken aback. "What did you say?" "I said enough," Marcus repeated, louder this time. "You don't get to control me anymore. You don't get to define who I am." For a second, Marcus thought maybe, just maybe, this was it. This was the moment where everything changed. But before he could say anything else, the bell rang, signaling the end of class. Trent smirked, his eyes still burning with hostility, but he turned on his heel and walked away, his friends trailing behind him. Marcus stood there, frozen, his heart racing. Had he done the right thing? Was this the moment he had been waiting for, or had he just made things worse? As he made his way to the next class, his mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. Was he really strong enough to stand up to them? Could he change his life, his circumstances, or was he just kidding himself? The words from the note echoed in his mind again. "You define the world." But how could he define it when everything around him seemed so determined to crush him? He sat down in class, trying to focus, but his thoughts kept drifting back to the confrontation. Had he made a mistake? Was he really ready for this battle? He glanced over at his phone, which buzzed in his pocket. It was another message from Malik. "Yo, you good? I saw what happened in the hallway. I'm worried, bro." Marcus stared at the message, his hands trembling slightly as he typed back. "I don't know. I think I did something, but I don't know if it was enough." Malik's response came quickly. "It's enough, man. I can tell. You're different now. Just wait, you'll see. It's coming." Marcus sat back in his chair, staring at the screen, the weight of Malik's words settling on him. What did he mean by that? It's coming. The rest of the day passed in a blur, but Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that something was building, something big, something that was going to change everything. That night, he lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, his mind racing with possibilities. He had stood up to Trent, but was it enough? Would the bullies finally leave him alone, or would they escalate, take it to the next level? And what about the woman's note? The words had haunted him for days now. Could he really redefine his life, redefine his place in the world? Could he be the person he had always dreamed of being, or was this just another false hope that was bound to fall apart? His phone buzzed again, and this time it wasn't Malik. It was a notification from the school's social media page. He hesitated for a moment before clicking on it. The post was a video, and as soon as it started playing, Marcus's stomach dropped. It was a clip of what had happened in the hallway earlier that day, the confrontation with Trent. Someone had filmed the entire thing. His heart raced as the video played out on the screen, showing Trent shoving him, then Marcus standing up for himself. The words were raw, the tension palpable. The video ended with Trent walking away, but Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to happen. The comments were already pouring in, some in support of him, but many more mocking him. The video had gone viral. Marcus's palms went clammy as he read through the comments. Some were supportive, others were cruel, but all of them were watching. Everyone was watching. He had never felt so exposed in his life. The world was watching now. And with it, the weight of his next move was heavier than ever. Marcus sat motionless, his phone still in his hands, staring at the screen in disbelief. The video had spread like wildfire. He hadn't expected this. He hadn't prepared for the storm it would cause. What was supposed to be a small act of defiance, a moment of standing up for himself, had turned into something much bigger. The comments were pouring in from all directions. Some people were praising him for standing up to Trent, calling him brave and strong. But the majority were mocking him, calling him weak, claiming he was only doing it for attention. Some of the comments were crueler than anything he'd ever heard at school. "Who does he think he is?" one comment read. "Some random kid trying to be a hero. He's gonna regret that, I guarantee it," another one mocked. Marcus's heart sank as he scrolled through more of the hateful responses. The video had gone viral, but not in the way he had imagined. What he thought would be a moment of empowerment was quickly spiraling into something far darker. Everyone at school would see it, and they wouldn't let him live it down. The whispers, the stares, they were only just beginning. His phone buzzed again, this time with a message from Malik. "Yo, bro, check your locker. There's something waiting for you." Marcus's stomach twisted. What could it be? He'd been trying to ignore the mounting tension all day, but now he couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to get worse. He hadn't even realized how much the pressure had been building until that moment. His chest felt tight, and the weight of the entire situation was threatening to crush him. The note from the pregnant woman, Malik's messages, the video, it all seemed to be colliding into a perfect storm. He arrived at school the next morning with a sense of dread hanging over him. The hallways felt different, like the air had thickened with tension. The usual crowd of students were hanging out in groups, their eyes flicking toward him as he walked by. The whispers had already started. He tried to keep his head down, but the weight of it all was overwhelming. The attention he had sought by standing up to Trent had come back to haunt him in ways he hadn't expected. By the time the bell rang for first period, he couldn't shake the sense that something was off. He couldn't focus on the lesson, his thoughts racing. He kept thinking about Malik's message. What was in his locker? He tried to push it out of his mind, but curiosity gnawed at him, making it hard to concentrate. He couldn't even remember when the bell rang to signal the end of class. As soon as the final bell rang, he hurried to his locker, trying to shake off the sinking feeling in his stomach. His fingers fumbled as he opened it, his heart pounding in his chest. Inside, there was a small envelope, plain white with no name or return address. Marcus hesitated for a moment before pulling it out. His hands were shaking as he opened it, the anticipation almost unbearable. The note inside was short and simple, but it struck him like a punch to the gut. "If you think standing up to Trent was the worst of it, you're wrong. The real challenge is just beginning. Don't think this is over. You've made things worse for yourself." His blood ran cold as he read the words. What did this mean? Was this someone from school sending him a warning? Or was it just another one of the bullies trying to mess with him? Either way, the feeling in his chest, the sense that something was closing in on him, grew stronger. He was being watched. He didn't know who had written the note, but he knew one thing for sure. This wasn't going to stop with the video. Whatever was coming next, it was going to be bigger, more dangerous. As he stood there, staring at the note in his hands, a voice behind him broke his thoughts. Marcus, right? He turned to see a girl he didn't recognize, standing just a few feet away from him. She was holding her phone in her hand, a camera aimed directly at him. Marcus's heart skipped a beat. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice strained. The girl smirked, lowering her phone for a moment. "Just wanted to let you know, the video is already making rounds all over school. You're going to be the star of the show for a while." Her tone was cool, almost detached, but there was something in her eyes that sent a chill down his spine. Before Marcus could respond, she stepped closer, lowering her voice. "I'd watch your back if I were you. Not everyone is impressed by what you did. You've made some enemies, and they're not going to forget it." Marcus swallowed hard, his mind racing. Enemies? Who were these people? What had he gotten himself into? His heart pounded as the girl walked away, her words hanging in the air like a warning. The rest of the day felt like a blur, the weight of everything pressing down on him. As the hours passed, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming, something he wasn't prepared for. His phone buzzed again, this time with a message from Malik. "Dude, I saw what happened. Are you okay? I think you might need to watch your back. There's something going on at school." Marcus stared at the message, his hands trembling. This was all spiraling out of control. What was the girl talking about? Who was sending these threats? And why did it feel like everything was closing in on him? As the school day ended, he found himself walking to the bus stop, feeling the weight of 1,000 eyes on him. He couldn't even tell who was looking at him anymore. Everyone seemed to be watching, whispering, judging. And the worst part was that Marcus had no idea what to do next. He didn't know how to stop it, how to make it go away. He was standing in the middle of a storm, and it was only going to get worse. The tension was unbearable as he stepped onto the bus, the familiar hum of the engine doing little to calm his nerves. He couldn't stop thinking about the note in his locker, the girl's words, and the way everything had escalated so quickly. Was he about to lose everything? The stakes were higher than ever before. And somewhere, deep down, he knew that whatever happened next would determine not just his high school years, but the rest of his life. The next few days felt like a blur, the weight of everything bearing down on Marcus with each passing hour. The whispers in the hallways were louder now, more aggressive. Every time he walked through the school, it felt like everyone was watching him, judging him. The video, the note in his locker, the cryptic warnings from the girl, it was all spiraling out of control. He couldn't escape the feeling that he was being pushed into a corner, that there was no way out. It was the Friday before the weekend when things finally reached a breaking point. Marcus walked into school, his stomach tight with anxiety. He was used to the whispers by now, but today was different. Today, it felt like everyone was staring at him, almost as if waiting for something to happen. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to explode. By lunchtime, the tension had reached its peak. Marcus sat in the cafeteria, trying to eat, but his food had no taste. He couldn't stop thinking about the messages, the video, the constant pressure. His phone buzzed again, and he glanced down to see a message from Malik. "Bro, you okay? I heard they're planning something after school. You need to watch your back." Marcus felt a cold chill run down his spine. He didn't know who they were, but he had a sinking feeling that it was going to be bad. The whispers weren't just rumors anymore. Something was about to happen, and he wasn't sure if he was ready for it. The girl's warning, the notes, the video, everything had led to this moment. It felt like a ticking time bomb, and he had no idea when it was going to go off. After school, he walked through the hallways with his head down, trying to avoid making eye contact with anyone. His heart was pounding in his chest, his palms sweating. He needed to get to the bus, to get away from the school and the growing storm of tension that surrounded him. But as he reached the exit, he saw them. Trent and his crew were standing in front of the doors, blocking his way out. The group was laughing and joking, but their eyes locked on Marcus the moment he stepped into view. His stomach dropped. He wasn't sure if he should turn around or keep walking. But as he took a step forward, Trent's voice rang out. Well, look who's finally come to face the music," Trent said, his voice dripping with malice. "Thought you could be the big hero, huh? Thought you could change everything just by standing up to me." The other boys snickered behind him, clearly enjoying the moment. Marcus stood frozen for a moment, his mind racing. He wasn't sure what to do. His heart was pounding so hard he could feel it in his ears. But then he remembered the note. He remembered what the woman had said. You define the world. And in that moment, he knew what he had to do. Yeah, I did, Marcus said, his voice steadier than he felt. He raised his chin, staring directly at Trent. And I'm not going to let you, or anyone else, tell me who I am. You don't control me anymore. The words hung in the air, thick with tension. Trent's smirk faltered for a second, but then he laughed, a harsh, cruel sound that echoed through the hallway. Really? You think you can just walk away from all of this? You think anyone's going to respect you for standing up to me? Trent's voice was full of venom. You're nothing, Marcus. You'll always be nothing. Marcus's hands clenched into fists at his sides. He felt the anger rising, but this time, it wasn't the kind of rage that made him want to lash out. It was different. It was controlled, focused. He wasn't going to let Trent's words define him. Not anymore. Before he could say anything else, there was a sudden movement behind him. The girl who had warned him earlier, the one who had filmed the video, appeared out of nowhere, stepping between him and Trent. She looked at Marcus with a determined expression. Trent, I think you've said enough, she said, her voice sharp and clear. Everyone in the hallway fell silent, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Trent looked at her, confused. What are you talking about? The girl took a deep breath before speaking again. You think you're the only one who can control the narrative? You think you can bully him into silence? You've been spreading lies about Marcus for days now. Well, I'm done letting you get away with it. She held up her phone, showing the entire school a new video. Marcus's heart stopped as he watched the footage on the screen. It was from earlier that week, but this time, it wasn't the version that painted him as the victim. It was a recording of Trent and his friends making cruel, racist jokes about Marcus, taunting him and mocking his every move. The whole hallway watched in stunned silence as the video played out. Marcus felt his stomach twist, but there was a sense of relief. 2. The truth was finally coming to light. Trent's facade was starting to crack. You think you can push him around? The girl continued. Not anymore. Marcus is stronger than you'll ever be. For a moment, no one moved. The weight of the truth hung in the air like a thundercloud, and Marcus could feel the tension shift, like the entire school was holding its breath. Trent's face turned red with anger, but there was something else there too, fear. He knew this was it. He knew his power was slipping away. But then, just as quickly as the storm had started, it ended. The bell rang, signaling the end of the school day, and the hallway erupted into chaos. Students began whispering excitedly, some applauding Marcus, others still hesitant, unsure of what to make of the new video. Trent's friends slunk away, embarrassed, while Trent stood there, glaring at Marcus. Don't think this is over, Trent spat, but there was no conviction in his voice. He knew the truth had been revealed. There was no going back now. Marcus stood tall, a sense of pride swelling in his chest. For the first time in his life, he felt like he had truly won, not by fighting back, but by standing firm and letting the truth speak for itself. As the crowd began to disperse, Marcus turned to the girl who had stood by him. Why did you help me? He asked, his voice low. She smiled, her eyes glinting with something he hadn't expected. Because I'm not the only one who's tired of people like Trent getting away with it. Marcus nodded, feeling a weight lift off his shoulders. He hadn't just survived this fight. He had found allies, and more importantly, he had found his own voice. But as the crowd slowly faded away and he walked toward the exit, there was one thing he couldn't shake, a nagging feeling in the pit of his stomach. What if this wasn't the end? What if the real story was just beginning? As he stepped outside into the cool air, he couldn't help but wonder, was this victory truly his, or was there something much bigger waiting just around the corner?